Hello and welcome back. I have a beard now. I would apologise for the delay on this video, but at this point it's just expected. Anyway, today I'm getting into the Final Fantasy franchise in the form of the first mainline game that I've played, Final Fantasy X. Admittedly not the first Final Fantasy game overall. I've played the first two Dissidia games and Crisis Core before this, but this is the first proper Final Fantasy game. So, let's get on with this, shall we? You start off in Zanarkand, where you play as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed pretty boy named Tidus, who is heading off to play a game which I can only describe as underwater football in a giant floating bubble. Suddenly, something that you can't quite properly see at the moment, called Sin, attacks the city of Zanarkand, and Tidus is saved by a guy named Arno who claims to know Tidus' father, who has been missing for years. After this calamity, Tidus wakes up in a mysterious ruin that he doesn't recognise, and is rescued / kidnapped by a group called the Al Bhed. He is taken aboard their ship, only for it to be attacked by Sin, who now you can properly see is some giant whale thing. Tidus is knocked off the boat and ends up washing up on a small island where he sees a bunch of people playing that underwater ball sport I mentioned earlier. The group of ball players are being led by a guy named Wakka, who has a very weird accent. I can only really describe it as American, Jamaican, Japanese, Slavic? It's revealed to Tidus that around these parts the people worship a cult / religion called Yevon, and also the city of Zanarkand has been a destroyed ruin for thousands of years, which Tidus finds very confusing. After being taken to the nearby village by Wakka, Tidus then bumps into a few new characters. The first being Yuna, who is a summoner who is heading out on a pilgrimage to go to the different temples to gain access to the summonable beings called Aeons, who are created from the souls of dead warriors and heroes of old. Her eventual goal is to arrive at the city of Zanarkand and there gain access to the final Aeon that will be able to kill Sin. She is following in the footsteps of her father, who was the previous summoner, as well as his two companions, Arno and Tidus' father, Jet. She is also accompanied by her two guardians, Lulu, the big-titted goth girl who thinks it's a good idea to make a skirt out of nothing but belts, and Kimahri, the big, buff, furry lion unicorn thing, who has about the same conversation skills as I do in any social situation. Tidus decides to go with Yuna to figure out what happened to Zanarkand and his father. Wakka also comes with, as he's pretty much heading to a ball game that's on the route. It's also explained to Tidus that there is a bit of animosity between the Al Bhed and the followers of Yevon, as well as Yuna having a mother who was Al Bhed. After stopping at a temple and having a brief confrontation with Sin, they arrive at their first major city for the ball game, from which point I will refer to by its in-game name of Blitzball. The ball game is being overseen by the heads of the cult of Yevon, including one guy named Seymour, who is so blatantly the villain that I'm honestly astonished that no one finds him suspicious at all. The tournament starts but is interrupted by the Al Bhed, who attempt to kidnap Yuna. Tidus and friends manage to stop this, and then proceed to head on with their quest, accompanied by the now retired Wakka. However, before they leave, Tidus bumps into Arno again that explains that Jet is Sin, even though Sin's been around for thousands of years and Jet is just one of the most recent people that fought him, which, well, let's just say gets explained later. After travelling a bit, Yuna gives us another revelation. Turns out, and trust me, you're going to be hearing that a lot, turns out that summoning the final Aeon to defeat Sin will also kill the summoner. Something that Tidus isn't exactly happy with, but he keeps on with the journey anyway. Along their way, they then bump into Seymour and Arno again, who are renting a bunch of high-tech weapons that they plan to use to destroy Sin. even though such weapons have been banned by the Cult of Yevon, which is also one of the reasons why they have so much bad blood with the Al Bhed. The big guns versus giant whale battle doesn't really go as they hoped, and all the weapons are destroyed and a bunch of people die. After this, Arno decides to join the party. Following their visit to the next temple, Yuna is captured again by an Al Bhed machine. Tidus manages to destroy it, but the person piloting the machine manages to escape, revealed to be one of the Al Bhed that saved Tidus at the beginning of the game by the name of Riku, who now decides to join the party. Next they arrive at Seymour's village, where he explains to them his plan to marry Yuna as part of some ambition that he has. Yuna decides to meet him at the next temple. Along their way to the temple, they are attacked by the Al Bhed again, who are probably attempting another kidnapping, and once again they are defeated. After arriving at the temple, Yuna decides to head off to meet with Seymour. Meanwhile, the rest of the gang wait around, but eventually they come across an information spear that Yuna had that reveals that Seymour is actually evil. No, you don't say! And Yuna's actual plan was to get close enough to Seymour so she could kill him and send his spirit to wherever spirits go in this world. The gang manages to catch up with Yuna and help her kill Seymour, only for Seymour's guard to show up and manage to retrieve his body before he can be sent, and then proceed to pursue the gang as they try to escape the temple. The party manages to fall through an icy lake and end up on top of Sin, and eventually they fall unconscious and end up on this weird desert where they have to reunite with each other. If this all sounds pointless, don't worry, there is a purpose to all this. Well, most of it anyway. Turns out that this desert island is actually the main headquarters of the Al Bhed, who have also managed to kidnap Yuna again. They have also been managing to kidnap other summoners who were attempting the pilgrimage. The city is then attacked by Seymour's goons, and you meet the leader of the Al Bhed that is not only Riku's father, but also Yuna's uncle. See, that little fact about Yuna's mother being Al Bhed was actually important. Also, the reason why the Al Bhed have been kidnapping summoners is so they wouldn't die having to try and summon the final Aeon. And it's also revealed that every time Sin is killed, he will eventually come back. Yuna has been kidnapped again and is now being forced to marry Seymour, who is still alive somehow. So Tidus and gang managed to get a flying machine that was given to them by the Al Bhed and use that to try and save Yuna. They almost achieve this, only to get captured by the Cult of Yevon, and they are brought to the leaders of the cult, and turns out that the reason why Seymour is still alive is that all the leaders of the cult are unsent spirits who haven't been able to pass on. They reaffirm that Sin always comes back, and then decide to just chuck the main protagonist in a couple of dungeons. They manage to escape the dungeons, only then to bump into Seymour again, who reveals that his actual plan is to become the new Sin, so he can kill everyone and save everyone from pain and suffering.
Wow! How original!
Seymour then turns into a thing, and then you defeat him, and then you and the party move on to head over Mount Gagazet to get to the ruins of Zanakin. On their way up the mountain, after bumping into Kimahri's species, they then meet Seymour again, who has just managed to genocide Kimahri's species off screen. He then fuses with a thing and you defeat him again. Further up the mountain, that it's revealed to Tidus that he and his father are actually ghost projections that are kinda similar to the Aeons that have been created by the dead spirits that died at Zanakin thousands of years ago, and his purpose is to try and destroy Sin for good, but doing so will release the spirits and he might disappear as a result. They eventually arrive at Zanakin, meeting Yunalesca, who is one of the first summoners who tried to defeat Sin, and she's also another unsent spirit. She reveals that to get the final Aeon, the person that is closest to the summoner, aka Yuna, needs to be sacrificed to become that final Aeon to defeat Sin. Oh, and also it's revealed that Arno is also an unsent spirit who was killed by Yunalesca because he wasn't really happy with this revelation. The party doesn't exactly agree with this plan and decide to just kill Yunalesca instead, which they do, but not before she mentions the name Yu Yevon. With no other options, they then head back to the head of the cult of Yevon and force him to spill the beans on what's actually going on. Turns out Yu Yevon was an ancient summoner that managed to merge with his Aeon to become Sin, and every time Sin is defeated by the final Aeon, Yu Yevon just jumps ships, merges and takes over the final Aeon and turns it into a new Sin, with the now Sinified Jet being the previous final Aeon in this process. Tidus and friends come up with an alternative plan to lure out Sin, damage him enough to be weakened, then fly into him using the airship and manage to defeat Yu Yevon and end the cycle. They manage to accomplish the first couple of steps, but after getting into Sin, they then bump into Seymour again. Seriously, how the fuck did he even get in here? He turns into a thing again, rinse and repeat, Seymour you defeat. Only this time Yuna finally gets the chance to send this bastard. The group then has to fight Jet in his final Aeon form, giving Tidus a bit of closure with his daddy issues. And then after a battle royale where you have to kill all the Aeons you gathered at this point, you then finally confront Yu Yevon, and he's a tick. He's a tick. He's a tick. He's a fucking tick! He's not even a giant tick, he's just a floating man-sized tick that can't kill you because all your characters have auto-revive for some reason, and all his attacks hurt him! This is it! This is the final boss! This is the thing that's been causing all this pain and suffering with Sin for all these thousands of years! Fucking hell, even a real-life tick poses more of a threat than this thing, and at least one of those could give you fucking Lyme's disease! Okay, rant over, I can finally move on. So you managed to defeat the big tick in a small pond, he gets sealed into an obelisk thing, Sin is defeated, souls are sent, Arno disappears, Tidus jumps off the front of the airship thinking that he disappears but doesn't, and that's the end. The game both is and isn't what you would expect from a JRPG that was released 23 years ago, Jesus Christ. The camera is fixed, you move around and interact with the regular buttons you would expect, although you can change them in the menu if you want to be obtuse about that thing. You proceed from area to area in a mostly linear fashion. However, the main thing that stands out about this game is the combat. As while it is a turn-based RPG, instead of all your characters taking their turns and then the enemy taking their turns, instead the turns and how they work are based on the character's speed. For example, characters and enemies that are faster get their turns first, while slower characters and enemies have to wait. There are also some attacks and abilities that affect a character or enemy's speed. For example, more powerful attacks can cause the one that used them to have to wait longer to attack again. As well as there are abilities that can either speed up a character, slow down another character, or delay the enemy's next attack. This might seem confusing at first, but thankfully the game has given a timeline for your attacks on the side of the screen so you can tell which character attacks and when. But apart from that, the combat is mostly what you expect. Along with the main game's campaign, there are a few side activities. Admittedly, not as many as there are in other games in the franchise, but they're there nonetheless. They mostly involve around high-level areas and enemies, getting hidden Aeons that you can collect, as well as the celestial weapons and their augmentations, which admittedly some of them can be kind of fun to get, and others are pretty annoying. I will never forgive the person who thought it would be a good idea to have the augmentation for Luna's celestial wish. I will never forgive the person who thought it was a good idea to make the augmentation for Lulu's celestial weapon require you to dodge 200 lightning bolts in a row in the Thunder Plains without getting hit. There's also Blitzball. This one does not spark joy. The graphics hold up reasonably well. Admittedly nothing outstanding for a game of its time with the stuff that's in-engine. However, the out-of-engine's cutscenes can be pretty stunning, to be honest. But even in the in-game engine, the character designs and environments are still reasonably detailed and get across the game's very unique aesthetic, which may or may not be your cup of tea. And anyway, as for the music, that's weird, he's not here. Well, I suppose he's off doing something more important. Now, I'm no music expert, but I do know that Final Fantasy is often regarded as having one of the best soundtracks in any game series. So much so that it spawned the Distant Worlds concerts. And the soundtrack for Final Fantasy X is often considered one of the best, with its album having 89, yes, 89 different tracks. Admittedly, none of the songs in the game are as memorable as Dancing Mad from Final Fantasy VI or One Winged Angel from Final Fantasy VII, but they're all still pretty good, or at least at worst okay. Although some of the tracks do get a bit repetitive after the amount of times you have to hear them. I'm looking at you, Battle Theme. My personal favourites, on the other hand, are Zanarkand, which is sort of the main menu theme in the game. Another World that is this cool, if kind of out of place death metal song. Blitz Off, which is probably the only good thing associated with the Blitzball activity. As well as the theme that plays with your final fight against Seymour, which along with Otherworld is probably a better final boss theme than the actual final boss's theme. This game is considered one of the all-time greats, and honestly I can kind of see why. Well, admittedly I won't say it's a perfect game like some others, as I feel there's a bit too many flaws in regards to both its age and some questionable decisions, as well as having a plot which probably takes quite a long time for you to explain what is actually going on. Overall, I would still say this game is pretty good. Probably not the worst place to enter into the Final Fantasy series. Heck, it did so well it was the first Final Fantasy game to get a direct sequel in the form of Final Fantasy X-2. Not to be confused with Final Fantasy XI or Final Fantasy XII, those are two completely different games. Overall, I'd say this game is worth giving a go, and it's probably easy to get your hands on a copy as it's been pretty much re-released and ported to every system so many times that it's giving Skyrim a run for its money. Well, that's all from me. See you guys next time.